Welcome back to the channel, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. So, Shawshank Redemption. What is there to be said about this movie that already hasn't been said? I believe it's the #1 rated movie on IMDb. And for those of you who don't know what IMDb is, it's a website, a very reputable website, I might add, where people can review movies, basically, where every single movie that's ever come out, I believe, or most of them at least, are reviewed, and there's thousands of reviews. So it's pretty it's, like I said, it's a pretty reputable website if you want to find a good movie or get into a good show. But I believe it's the #1 rated movie, and honestly it's kind of hard to argue with that. This is perhaps the greatest movie ever made. And it's not just because of the story. It goes far deeper than that. Everything about this film is absolute perfection. From the themes, the memorable quotes, the acting is phenomenal. But I think the thing that really stands out about this movie, beyond anything, beyond any acting or, theme, I think it speaks to the human spirit, and it speaks to the soul. You leave this film after watching it, you just feel good about yourself. You feel good about life, and you feel like you can accomplish anything. You watch the story of this man, right? Andy Dufresne, the main character, and I won't spoil the movie for you if you haven't watched it. I'm just gonna be going over the theme that really stood out to me from this film, and that's the theme of hope. The theme of the undying hope that most of us possess, and how that can pretty much get you through any hurdle in life. Unfortunately, a lot of us lose that undying hope and faith that we have for ourselves and for our futures, right? And a lot of us get lost along the way, and it's a pretty sad thing to see. I'm pretty sure you can relate to this. Just walking around, in life, daily life, just taking a look at at most people's faces and demeanor. They look totally defeated. They look like life is absolutely crushing them. They look like they've been through the blender almost, right? And that's not to sound like, judgmental. Everybody goes through tough times, but this just seems to be pretty much the norm nowadays, unfortunately, right? And don't get me wrong, life is tough for everybody, but it's a very sad reality that we're in. It's very cyberpunkish, kind of dystopian, just society that we're headed towards, right? All these movies predictively programming the future, but that's another story. So the theme of hope, the undying spirit of the human being, right, is perfectly exemplified through the character of Andy Dufresne, who is a character who was very unjustly put into jail. So he gets put into Shawshank, right? Unjustly, unfairly. He is framed for a murder that he didn't commit. And basically all throughout the film, at least from what I took of it, is, the constant battle of Andy Dufresne's spirit versus the world around him. You have him put into very undesirable, circumstances from the get-go. He is facing all these different problems, right, that he probably didn't have before. His occupation before was an accountant or a tax preparer, something along the sort. I think he was an accountant. So his life literally changes from one day to the other. Completely different circumstances. His life is basically put upside down, and he has to deal with all these problems, right? And again, this movie just has so much depth to it in terms of themes and messages and impact, that you can literally find themes everywhere. So that's one theme from the get-go, right? How life can change from one moment to the other, and how you respond to it is what defines your future. But again, you have Andy, who is basically fighting against the system that he's put into, right? He is doing all these sorts of creative, challenging the status quo actions that, kind of puts the whole vibe around him on its head, right? So it's just a constant battle between his spirit and the world around him. For example, he tries to shape the world around him, and he doesn't let his circumstances define him. There's a great quote in the film where Red, one of Andy's friends, says that Andy would walk around the prison like he had an invisible shield to him, or something along the lines, right? This man had aura. Nowadays it's called aura, right? That's a very popular term that I'm sure you've heard of before. But this is something that we can take away from his character, right? He remained himself. He didn't let the world around him shape him into just another cog. Most of the prisoners there are completely devoid of life, and then comes in Andy, right? He comes into the system and he completely changes their worlds for the better. There's a great example in the film as well where they're sitting on, well, I guess this video is going to contain a little bit of spoilers, so if you don't want any more spoilers from the film, if you haven't watched it, right, watch the film and come back to this video. There's a great scene in the movie where Andy and his friends are sitting atop, this building after basically covering the top of it with tar, right? The roof of it. And Andy comes up with this elaborate plan, the scheme, and he ends up convincing the guards to give them beer. And there's various examples of this throughout the film where Andy is just creatively finding ways to make his world better, right? That fire inside him is not dead. He has the hopes for a better life. And it basically shines through him all throughout the film, right? And all these little examples that we see, whether it be that scene from the rooftop or him, finding a creative way to get out of the prison, that spirit inside him basically never dies. So be like Andy Dufresne, right? Don't let that spirit inside you, don't let that zest for life be extinguished from you. Because like I said, unfortunately, a lot of us along the way, we get lost and we lose that childhood essence, right? That childhood fire, that creativity that we are born with along the way, right? And we just become these kind of zombies just walking around life. It's a very sad thing to see. I'm sure you can probably relate to what I'm saying, just coming across a person who is completely devoid of any sort of life, right? They look completely lifeless. They look like they've given up. It's a very sad thing to see, right? And it's kind of hard because the world is constantly trying to break you down, but don't let it break you down. Always have that hope, always have that faith, always have that fire to make your life better and to believe that your future is going to be great, right? Making the most of what life throws at you. Right, I think the opposite side of the spectrum is again perfectly illustrated by that one old man in the film. The guy that was taking care of the baby crow. He had been in there for years. I forget what his crime was. So it was basically, he had a life sentence and he kind of just gave up, right? I think that just perfectly illustrates what happens to people who give up, right? Who let the system break them and they give up hope. They just kind of live their life, right? They get to old age perhaps, but they're completely devoid of any life. And in the end, it doesn't end up, too good for them. The old man in the film, it's a very sad thing what happens to him. So I think his character just symbolized what happens to people who give up along the way, right? Who let the world bring them down, who let the world crush them. So Andy never gives up, and at the end of the film, as we all know, he ends up achieving his freedom. And those last few scenes in the film are beautifully shot because it's just a completely different, panoramic, just scenes of or view or of what happened to Andy. The scenes towards the end of the film are just completely different to the whole vibe of the film in general, right? The last few scenes are full of color. The ocean is in a lot of the shots. There's this beautiful beach where Andy and Red reunite, after a long time. And it just looks completely different to what most of the film looks like, just kind of a grayish, blackish, darkish colors, right? And towards the end of the film, you have all this life, you have all this vibrancy in the shots. And again, it just perfectly illustrates what happens to those people who never give up, who always strive for more and just get to that finish line, as corny and cliche as that may sound, right? Those people are rewarded in some shape or form. So again, like I said, there's plenty of themes throughout this film. And another one, the prison symbolizes the system that we're born into, right? It symbolizes what happens to most people who are born into the system. It's just the perfect way to illustrate, society in a way. The prisoners, their shirt numbers, what society thinks of us. It's just a really beautiful film, right? For all the reasons that I stated. everyone has their own Shawshank, right? Everyone has their own sort of prison. But be like Andy Dufresne at the end of the day. Never give up. Always maintain that hope that things will get better. Put the action towards it and live your life with energy and, assess for life, right? Don't become another zombie. Don't become another, person that just kind of gives up along the way and lets life completely, sweep them off their feet in a bad sense. So, again, life rewards those who never give up and who maintain hope and faith to the bitter end, right? So always do your very best with what you have, and always maintain that faith. There's a great